Okay, well, welcome everybody to the Audit Committee of the 27th of September. We start with the usual apologies for absence from Andrea.
We have apologies from Councillor Towns and Peter Toppin.
Okay, that's good, but we're still quorate in that case, that's good. Item number 2 on the agenda is the minutes from the last meeting. Now, as usual, I'm not proposing to go through these page by page. Everybody's had these minutes for over a week and had a chance to read them. If anybody has any comments, happy to take them now, but if not, are you happy for me to sign these off as a true record? Agreed? Thank you. Item number 3, disclosure of members' interests. As usual, unless already entered on the Council's Register of Members' Interests, members are required, where a matter arises at a meeting which directly relates to a disclosable pecuniary interest, as set out in Appendix B, Table 1 of the Code of Conduct. The usual disclosure. Has anybody got anything particular relating to today's agenda that they need to disclose? Councillor Reid?
Yes, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. When it gets to advance, I'll have to leave the room as I have an interest in being the chair. Okay, thank you. Nothing more apart from that. Thank you very much. Moving on, item number 4. This is the monitoring report and action log. This is the one that's a standard item where we monitor actions that have been carried out over the period and check that we're on track with the work that we say that we're going to receive. So we can go to item number 4. The first one on the panel is the Cala report. The action was regular updates on progress made to address issues raised from the Cala report, including monitoring progress on the action plan and the subsequent recommendations of the Challenge Board. And for this item to be placed on the work programme. The outcome was the ongoing monitoring as and when appropriate. Do we have any update on when the next feedback might be, Jan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I understand an update is being provided to the group leaders at their meeting next week, maybe later this week. Anyway, shortly. And I will propose that we bring a similar update to the next meeting of this committee.
Excellent. So the next meeting will be in November, at the end of November. So that's we'll put that on the list if we can make a note of that, please, Andrea.
Yes.
So we'll expect an update on the end of November.
Chair.
Yes, Councillor Wallace.
Excuse me. Sorry for interrupting. Next meeting's 2 months away. It's 8 weeks. That's. I hope I can contain my excitement waiting. Well, and be flipping. Could we not receive an email to give us that information beforehand rather than wait 8 weeks? I raised a similar point, Chair, at full council for corporate services. For something I asked in June, it wasn't delivered in September, so I've now got to wait till November. We just seem to be waiting and waiting for something that we as members feel is very important, the Cala report. So a further delay, and I use that word deliberately, delay, whereas I just wonder, if a report is going to the leaders' meeting this week, why do we have to wait 8 weeks to get a copy of it?
I'll pass that on to Jan. Is it possible to get an interim report to the committee members and then maybe discuss it at the next meeting so that you've had plenty of time to digest it? Is that possible, Jan?
I don't see any reason why something can't be shared ahead of the next meeting, but you did ask for a formal report at a meeting, and that's what I'm proposing to bring to the November meeting. But I can assure the committee that we are making really good progress, and the vast majority of the actions coming out of the original Cala review and the Challenge Board, the final Challenge Board report, have already been completed or are already well advanced. A number of those have been incorporated into the BEST programme, which is, and we will be reporting on the BEST programme to the next meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So it's not that, it's not, all of that information is not just being reported here, it is being reported in other places as well. But yes, I'm happy to give a more informal update.
Okay.
And perhaps, for discussion with Councillor Wearmouth, it might be helpful to do an all-member briefing rather than just for members of this committee, so that everybody's cited. But I'm happy to take that away.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Wallace? So thank you, John. Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillor Grimshaw, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment. Would this include every aspect of the Cala report? Because there are areas that, you know, there is rather, well, not as much concern as there was, but, you know, a misogyny in the workplace. I would like an updated report on that, if possible, as well, please, if that could be included.
Okay, I'm not sure which specific Cala recommendation you're referring to, because I don't recall one about that. Are you talking about the issue about female voices not being heard?
Yes.
Okay, right. So I believe there was also that was also part of the update. So yes, I'll get. Sorry, I think Councillor.
Could I just put very quickly, but that also, if you don't mind, would be staff or workforce as well, you know, included in that, if you don't mind. I know this is just going on, you know, member to member, but it's also if we could have an update with regard, because I know it's questionnaires, etc., gone out to staff with how we're performing, etc., and it's just to see, you know, how they are now coping with things that has gone on in the past, and hopefully that's better as well, so that could assure this committee that things are indeed progressing the way that we would love them to be.
Well, hopefully that'll come out with the official report when it comes in November, Councillor, so we'll
thank
pass
you
on
very
that
much.
one.
Thank
you for the question.
Thank you.
Councillor Wearmouth, you have a comment?
Thank you. Is that working? I don't know if it is working or not,
I think
hopefully it is, Councillor Grimshaw. And well, can Jack, I'm happy with that. So just lighting up the
There we are.
that's better.
Right, okay. So I think Jan's explained it very well, but let's just make sure that we all understand that there's multiple places that this information comes to. So when you're talking about, Councillor Grimshaw, about staff in the workplace, employees of the council as opposed to councillors, that would probably come to a stack meeting. And I can't remember if you sit on that committee or not. I don't think you do. I think it's it's Councillor Dickinson, Councillor Purvis and Councillor Simpson, isn't it? Yes. And then when it comes to other elements, those will go to economic overview and scrutiny, most likely, I would think, and then some to audit, depending on the suitable place for the discussion. As the Section 151 officer observes, there's a report that's been prepared which has gone in a sort of more informal basis at the moment to group leaders. I think they're discussing it on Friday. And if you want to have that information, I'm sure that all of your group leaders can take a call from you or discuss that or share that information. And we have no reason not to share that more widely, subject to their agreement in due course. So hopefully that helps to explain where things go and where the information is.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you, Councillor Wearmouth, because obviously this is a complex thing, and there are various strands that go into different areas, because some areas that have no interest in one thing and so others have no interest. But as long as we get the things that we're interested in as an audit committee, I think that's the key thing. So I think we've got an assurance from Jan that that's going to happen. So that's been very helpful. Thank you. Number 2 on our list here is Strategic Transformation Programme Business Case. Now, this one's been rumbling on for a while now, and the suggestion here is to remove this with committee approval. It was to receive a report on the business case to ensure best value for money for the outlook placed on the work programme. There was a suggestion that Corporate Services and Economic Growth OSC would scrutinise the business case and suggested a discussion with the Chair and Vice Chair of the committee to ensure there's no duplication of workload. The business case was considered at OSC. The suggestion is just to remove this one from the to-do list going forward. Councillor Dale, you have a question?
Can I just mention, actually, I brought this up, which was taking reference to the statements and accounts, which I brought up with Jan, about the employment and the amount of people who were off sick, etc., etc. And further to that, in this report, which we've got today, there are reports about problems with recruitment, and that goes through quite a few areas of service. Also, I've actually brought some up with Jan. On top of that, today we have a report on the Scrutiny Committee report written by the Ombudsman, where the Council once again has said there is problems with recruitment. So the actual strategic transformation, the whole issue about service delivery, obviously there is an issue which we also had with the fire. All the way through we've had a lot of problems, issues with recruitment and not enough people to provide the services. I've got one which I won't say which it is, but 17.5 weeks delay. There's all kinds of things which I think should be brought together and measured against actually our delivery of service and, you know, what is happening because of the recruitment. Now, whether that goes into the transformation programme, but it has to sit somewhere and it has all to be collated together because we've seem to have got it all over the place. So we've got one on overview and scrutiny today, which the Ombudsman has brought up. We've got one today with about social services. We've had one about the fire. We've also had one about leisure. So all the services, there seem to be this issue about, once again, recruitment. It's not just this council, let me say. I think it's a problem across, but it is having an impact on our service delivery.
Absolutely, but in terms of this particular action, on the action list, Councillor, are we happy to actually remove this one? Councillor Jackson, you had a question.
Right, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm very unhappy about this, to be honest with you. We as an audit committee, we seem to be closing down every line of investigation that's suggested by the members of the committee. We've got a perfect right to see these reports, and I think we should. The strategic transformation programme was put into the budget as a specific item, and by memory it was about £3 million a year. And we as an audit committee wanted to see the detail behind that. I still want to see the detail behind that in the audit committee, so I absolutely don't think we should remove this from our work programme. Okay.
In that case, then, can I take a show of hands? And should we keep this in, or should we take this out? Because the suggestion was to take it out. Who would want to take it out? Nobody? And I presume everybody else would say keep it in? Is that right? Yes. Yep. Show of hands, yep. Okay. Well, in that case, then, we keep that in. And, yes.
Just to clarify, it says to receive a report on the business case. The strategic business case has already been the subject of a public report to Cabinet in January. That report is already available to all members. It's on the council website. So I just want to clarify if you just want to discuss that report or if you're actually asking for something else. Because from Councillor Dale's question, it sounded like you wanted something more. So the position is the strategic business case is already in the public domain, has already been approved by Cabinet, and you can have a discussion about it here. The update on the delivery of the BEST programme is due to go to the next Corporate Services and Economic Growth Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and in that update I have asked that we go into some detail about the Best Talent and Opportunities work stream, which includes all of the work that we're doing to improve the recruitment process. There was also an Overview and Scrutiny Committee at its meeting on Monday, the annual workforce report, which went into a great deal of detail, both in the report itself and in the discussion about where we are in terms of recruitment vacancies, etc. So, you know, I think the issue is, you know, what specific things would this committee like to focus on, which is not just duplicating what's already been done elsewhere. And I would find it helpful to get a steer from the committee on that, so we can bring you what you actually want to see.
Yeah, Councillor Jackson.
I mean, I'd like to start because I think we've all got our issues that we would like to raise, and that's the point about seeing the detail of seeing the report, is we can sort of you know, ask questions about the detail that lie behind that report. I personally just want to see the value for money for those £3 million a year that the council put in the budget. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, so I mean, the impression I'm getting is that people don't have any specifics at the present time. They want to see the report, so they could open a discussion for an audit committee benefit, for the benefit of this committee. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, so I think it's the update report as opposed to the original business case is what we're asking for. So it may be a bit of duplication with corporate service, but I think it's important that it'll be approached from a different angle here to that committee.
Well, we probably need to change the wording of this then, because that's the thing. So rather than remove it entirely, because there was no appetite to remove this entirely, it doesn't actually reflect what we're saying now. We're saying that we would like, as a committee, to receive the update report so we can discuss the content of said update report. Does that make sense? If Andrea wouldn't mind changing the wording of this so it actually reflects what we're talking about, because it's a bit of it's lost its meaning a little bit in this, the way it's written in here. Okay, if we're happy with that, I think we're on the same page now. That was a little bit, went round the houses a little bit. Councillor Dale?
Approach taken to the problems with recruitment and the delivery service and the value for money. The problem is they all seem to appear in different committees. So you'll have one committee and they'll say that. They'll have another one, somebody else says that. So we want to gather everything together where we've got problems or concerns about recruitment, which is overall about the business transformation, everything else. So rather than having one committee saying, oh, we've got this one and we've got that one. For instance, we've got one this afternoon which is about planning. And it also, there's something in here about social services. And I'm saying, but we should have them all together. So actually, they're not in bits and pieces all over the place. And then we have, as the audit committee, we have a final position about where we stand.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get to that once we get the update report through. And I think we're clear in our own minds now what it is we're asking for and why we're asking for it. And I think that's clear. And I feel more comfortable if that wording was changed to reflect the current thinking of the committee. So I'm happy with that. Okay, if we can move on. Item 3 on this list. Sorry, Councillor Jackson.
Just before we leave the action list.
Put your microphone on, Councillor.
Yeah. Sorry, just before we leave the action list, there are things that one or two of us on the committee have been asking for. And I did expect to see them on the action list rather than just forgotten about. So if you refer to page 12, which was the minutes of the previous meeting, myself and actually Councillor Dale asked for two particular things. I asked for an investigation into the appointment and dismissal of statutory officers because, as a lot of us know, there is a lot of legislation around that, and I think it's important that the audit committee actually know how the council have been operating in relation to that legislation. My view is that there have been quite a lot of illegal activity in that, and I need reassurance to the audit committee about whether or not that is the case. Councillor Dale was looking for more detail about the exit interviews, and I think both of those things were generally accepted by the committee, and I expected to see them on the action list. I propose now that we actually put those two things on the action list for a future meeting, and so we can get some detail as an audit committee on that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jackson. Is everybody happy with Councillor Jackson's suggestion there of adding those items onto the action list? We haven't actually finished the action list, by the way. We've got more items on the bottom here.
If I might, Chair.
Yes.
So I must counsel some caution with the use of language here. We were very careful in the wording we put in the report last time, and I did counsel caution to members. We did not use the term illegal, and I will not use it now. If members choose to do so, they do so at their own risk. It was made quite clear last time the basis upon which the report was made and the advice was given. So I would just remind members.
Absolutely, thank you. The monitoring officer obviously is quite correct there.
Well, no, you're perfectly entitled to your view, and I'm entitled to my view.
We had quite a discussion last time on the definition and the use of the word illegal. It's not illegal, it's unlawful. It's a different thing entirely. So we have to be very careful. It's not semantics, it's actually, it's correct use of the word. So thank you for that point. It's well made. Are we getting back to Councillor Jackson's suggestions for putting those items on the list. Are we happy as a committee that you'd like to have them on the action list work? So I'm not getting the feeling that that's universally what's wanted at the present time. We've got three for definite, yes. Was that a yes?
Can I just
Councillor?
add on to this? I think maybe we're looking at the workforce process and not independently onto this subject, because I've got a different thing about that. So I'm looking at workforce. I'm not working back at the actual report we had that you referred to. Mine was about exit packages, which could be across the board as well. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay, well, look, I think these can be put on the action list. Some of these things can be taken offline, not necessarily through the committee. Some will be debated by the committee. But I'm happy to capture these on the action list, if that is the opinion of the majority on the committee. I'm happy to do that. Councillor Grimshaw, you
Thank you. Well, I'm afraid I don't agree, because I thought all this was put behind the debate and we're moving forward. So I'm sorry, I don't agree with that, because, you know, in order to move forward, we'll have to close off what's already been, it's in the past. So I can't agree with that. I'm terribly sorry. But I do agree with Councillor Dale that we do need further information about all of the areas of people who are, the vacancies that need filled, and is it value for money? Because there might be recruitment. I don't know if we could benchmark to see if other authorities is in the same position because they can't recruit. And there's loads of reasons, but it would be nice to see if we could, just have a benchmark to see if other areas has got the same problems as we have in Northumberland. And it could be for, various reasons, but it would be nice to look at it further, if you don't mind. But I'm certainly can't agree with looking back in the past. Sorry, Councillor Jackson.
Okay. I'm happy if we carefully word this and we know what we're talking about, to put suggestions on from councillors, because I think that if it actually pertains to the work of the Audit Committee, it's relevant. I do take your point, Councillor Grimshaw, as that we could regurgitate history forever ad infinitum, but there comes a point where the committee, I think, has to take a decision. Is that a legitimate question for the committee to ask, and have we had an answer to that question? And I think this sort of almost falls into that sort of territory. I think we have to be very careful with this, because as the monitoring officer has rightly said, we have to be very careful with our language in this area, because this is a very sensitive area, and it is important to get it right what we're talking about here. Yes, Councillor Sesford.
Yeah, it's all right saying that we have to forget things in the past, but what is the point of an audit committee if when you find something that you wish to query its activities, then you just say, no, that's looking back in the past, so we just forget about it. I mean, we are here to do a proper audit of things that have happened in the past, and without answers, then nothing's clear. So I think things need to be looked at. I think it's one way or the other, but just brushing them under the carpet and saying, well, that's let sleeping dogs lie is not the correct answer. I think
it's one of those fine lines, isn't it? It's a balance between what benefit do we get out of asking these questions, and have we got the answers already, or if we haven't got the answers already, are they questions for this committee to ask? And as long as we're comfortable that they are questions for this committee to ask, the thing about it being in the past, well, everything to do with internal audit and external audit is in the past. Audit is about looking at the past as what's happened and analysing it. So the fact it's in the past is probably a bit of a red herring, to be quite honest. It's whether it's irrelevant to the committee that would worry me, but I'm not sure if it is irrelevant to the committee. It's a part of the governance and the assurance and the scrutiny of this committee. So I think Councillor Oliver, you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. We've had 2 Section 114 notices. We've had reports at the last audit committee that would have possibly, well, one and a Section 1, yeah, technically. But we've also had reports at the last audit committee where it was written that they may have warranted further 114 notices, but again, that ship had sailed, so we were sort of moving on. I think the point that I would make is this is about accountability, and what we've seen is we've learned something, but not everything, about where process failed. What we haven't had is any accountability. I asked at the last audit meeting about whether there should be a police referral, and I was told that there was no evidence of fraud. What we do know, though, is that there was over £1 million of unlawful payments, and on the point of unlawfulness, my understanding is that something is illegal if it breaks a law. Something is unlawful if there's no law about it. Well, there are laws about misuse of public funds. There are all sorts of laws about the way council operates. And if some of these things have broken those laws, then they're illegal and not unlawful. So I would ask that we actually ask for a short paper explaining whether the council is going to make a police referral and some explanation of this distinction that keeps getting referred to on the difference between unlawful and illegal. What we have, what is beyond dispute...
Have we not had that in the last
No, we haven't. I don't understand. I mean, I speak to friends who are lawyers, and I get quite a different understanding of the different distinction between unlawful and illegal than I'm getting from the council. But in a sense, none of that matters. What matters is that we've had significant reports, done publicly, and since you became chair, we've had absolute transparency on all of this, and I commend that. But it's stopped short of accountability, and I think that's where we need. And if there's no evidence of fraud, but there's all sorts of things like reports written after payments were made justifying those payments, which we were told there was, then surely that is an indication that there may have been deliberate acts that may be illegal, and therefore there should be a referral to the police. And then the police could ask questions that the council can't ask. We would get to the bottom of what's actually happened, and then there would be proper accountability. If the police come back and say there's nothing to see here, then that's absolutely fine. But the fact that we're not making that referral, I think, with so much public money involved, I think is an absolute travesty.
What are you proposing then, Councillor Oliver?
I'm proposing that we make the referral, because we've heard so much that I think that there must be justification for doing that. And when we've talked previously in the Audit Committee, we've heard about other councils that have made referrals for things that are much less than what has happened here. And if we're not going to make the referral, then I would ask that we have a full report explaining in detail why we're not making the referral.
I'll come to Councillor Dale in a second. I just want to there's quite a lot to unpack in there, because that was quite a big comment. The Section 151 officer, Jan, have you got anything to say to that?
Yes, so at the last meeting I said, at the moment, I don't have any evidence that anything illegal or of a criminal nature, but that I said that I was continuing to look into the issues, and if and when sufficient evidence came to light that will warrant a police referral, then that is what I would do at that time, and I would also report back to this committee, and that is where we currently are. So further work has been undertaken by internal audit. I'm considering their findings report, which I received last week, also taking further legal advice on exactly the issues that you've outlined, Councillor Oliver, as I said I would at the last meeting. And when I have fully considered those matters, then I will decide whether, in my view, a referral to the police is warranted. It remains open to anybody to make a referral to the police at any time, but clearly, it would be better if a referral were to come from this council, supported by all of the relevant evidence, so that we're not wasting police time. But it's not something that we would do lightly. And the difficulty that we have had all along here is the absence of information and the absence of evidence. We're trying to fill in the gaps as best we can. But until that work's concluded, I can't tell you whether I think a police referral is warranted or not.
Thank you. Can I just make my point? I mean, thank you. That's encouraging, and thank you very much for that update. I guess one key point is that the access to the information that you will have would be very different to the access to the information that the police would have. So many of the people that might hold relevant information about this have probably left the council. Well, I've certainly left the council, and the police would have access to them that you don't have. So in terms of the the bar, surely it should be the police that are deciding where the bar is. And I understand if there's nothing there at all, it would be wasting police time. But if there's reasonable suspicion, then...
I think we're risking drifting into an entire process here, Councillor Oliver, with respect. And I think that the Section 151 officer's answer was pretty concise, and I think encouraging as well, because you are still looking at these things and all options are still open, and the reports will come back to this committee. And I think I think we close it at that point, because we're risking starting to try and unpack a huge thing here, and it's not really necessary in this particular juncture. So thank you, John, for that update that you made. Councillor Dale, you had one question, I think.
Yes, can I just go back to the report, which is very clear that the Constitution was wrong in various places, and therefore process wasn't wrong. And I think we have to be careful about actually, I wrote, and I've got the emails and everything else, I wrote in February 2018 to the council saying that the Constitution was wrong then. I've still got it all in file, and I'm quite happy to share it. But the Constitution, as far as employment law, was wrong from that time. Now, over the period of time, there has to be from 2017, September 2017, all the way through. I'm not sure who looked at the Constitution, when it was reviewed, etc., etc. But there's a bigger picture behind all of this, which actually would feed in to this report. And that's the basis of the Constitution not agreeing with employment law.
Okay, thank you.
There's all kinds of things like
Thank
that.
you,
And I think we need, can I just say, we need to ensure that we know that the Constitution was incorrect. So that doesn't mean anybody was doing something, because that's what the Constitution said.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to close this one down here, because I think we've had an interesting discussion, and I think we've got some progress. Section 151 officer has updated us, and I think it's an encouraging update, and there will be more stuff coming to this committee in the near future. So I think that's as far as we can go with it at the present time. Let's get on with the Audit Committee action list. Items 3 and 4. Number 3 was the International Lessons Learned Review. A report received by the committee in July 23. Audit Committee will receive a further progress report in 6 months' time. And we have an outcome report scheduled for the January 24 meeting, which I think is still on schedule, Jan?
Yes. Okay.
And item number 4, International Lessons Learned Review, a query as to the cost of the investigation, which was Section 151 officer Jan Willis to meet with Councillor Grimshaw after the meeting to discuss. Has that actually happened?
Chair, no, it hasn't. Unfortunately, Councillor Grimshaw and I've had to reschedule a number of meetings, okay. So we're still to have that. But, so still to have but I will follow that up later today and do it by email, Councillor Grimshaw, if that's okay with you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair.
Excellent, thank you. And the final one, number 5, statement of accounts for the year 31st of March, a query regarding days lost to sickness and contractor claims. Jan Bliss to meet with Councillor Dale after the meeting to discuss. Did that happen?
Yes, Councillor Dale and I have met, and I have referred Councillor Dale to the annual workforce report, which contains a very detailed set of statistics around sickness, and I am following up the query about contractor claims.
Excellent.
So
thank you.
I think we can probably close
we
that
can close
action
that one.
if Councillor Dale's happy. I think we can close this action if you're happy. Yes. Yeah, that's great. Well, if you're both happy with that, we'll close that one. Thank you, Andrea. Take number 5 off the list. Just very quickly, on the next page, this is the standard work programme. We have counter-fraud annual report. Yes, that's coming to this meeting at item 6. An update on internal audit work in relation to active group entities. That's item number 12. Annual report from the Audit Committee is item 7. The external audit strategy memorandum is on item 8, and a review of external inspection reports, adult social care and children's services, we have that as item 5. So that's all in train and delivered as we expected, so that's good. Okay, if we can move on to item number 5 on your agenda pack. This is the review of external inspection reports for adult social care and children's services. And who do we have to present this one?
That's me, Chair. Alan
Oh,
Hopewell.
hello, Alan. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'm Alan Hartwell from Children's Services, and I'm joined by Alan Curry from Adult Services, and he can answer questions about that sector when it comes to it. I'll just, Chair, give some headlines from the report. This is the 6th monthly report that this committee will now be familiar to receiving, and I would refer first of all to the first bullet point amongst the key issues under section 4 of the report, where it says that Northumberland's residents are protected, cared for and supported by services that external bodies, so those could be people like Ofsted, the Probation Inspectorate or the Care Quality Commission, judge on the whole to be good. And where they do fall below that, there are details within the report about the council acting promptly, where that is within its powers to take action. The report does provide what is really a further improving picture within adult services and also Northumberland schools, and it also provides details about the outcome from the Youth Justice inspection as well. The report does detail under those relevant sections about where inspection judgments have fallen from the previous judgment. The report does outline what action is being taken, so I'll not go into detail about that. Chair, if it's okay, there has actually been considerable amount of inspection activity since this report was submitted. It was submitted in the middle of August. So I can just provide members with some updates so it can bring us up to date.
Yes, please.
In terms of what the current picture really is as of today. The members will see that the report does refer to the thematic review that's been undertaken by Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission about services to 0 to 2-year-olds. That review took place at the end of August. There won't be any formal report about that. Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission are clear about that. But what there will be is that there will be a composite report from all of the reviews that were undertaken across the country. What I can say was that the feedback from Northumberland was positive, and in particular, the feedback from the inspectors is that they did say that the family hub development within Northumberland is at the forefront of national developments and it is very innovative. The other inspection activities that have taken place since the report was submitted in the adult care sector, members will note that there was a report being awaited about Alexandra Park provision, and with that has now been received, and that moved from inadequate judgment to requires improvement judgment. And what that means across the adult care provision is that there is currently no inadequate graded provision within the adult care sector. Currently, Phoenix House Children's Residential Home is currently being inspected. We got notification yesterday from Ofsted, so that will be a 2-day inspection, yesterday and today. And so members will be advised about the outcome of that inspection when this report is due for its next 6-monthly update. Also, after this report was submitted, we received the report for Thorndale Children's Residential Home, and that was judged to be good, a really positive result. And all of the children's residential provision within Northumberland local authority maintained does continue to be good or outstanding. The other inspection activity that I would also refer to is that the report mentions that the report on Bede Academy from Ofsted was awaited, and that has been received, and Bede Academy continues to be judged as a good school. Chair, that brings us up to date in terms of the inspection activity that has taken place. The report does refer to inspections that we are awaiting, so we do expect to have the inspection of the local authority children's services shortly, and we also know that we are going to receive an area-wide inspection around special educational needs and disabilities, which will be undertaken jointly by Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission. But there is no clear indication about when those inspections will take place. I think that covers really the highlights from the inspection, but happy to take any questions or to take any questions back to colleagues if more detail is required. And likewise, I know that Alan would respond the same about the adult care sector.
Okay, thank you, Alan. It is a positive report. I'll open this one straight up for questions. Councillor Dale.
Yeah, sorry, thank you very much. And it's good to see some positive things. And it's good to hear about the hubs. Can I just say one or two things? The care homes, I always think that the council does an awful lot of good going in and helping. And when they require improvement, it'd be interesting to find out what happens the next time round and how quickly are they actually, when do they have the next visit? Do they leave it for a year or 6 months or how long? So it'd be quite interesting to see that they're actually taking on board the help that the county council is giving. And just about the schools, because I think I find it very interesting, the changes from first to primary, but not also that, also the trust academies and the changes all the schools have gone through. So it would be quite nice to know, for instance, when you look at primary and first schools, I think primary schools moving and having an Ofsted, first schools moving to primary must have had a very difficult time during Ofsted, and it's good to see that they've done well. I think what I would like to see is in all of this, which are academies and which are actually still maintained. Because that would be helpful, because there's a great discussion going on about the academisation programme and how good it is. As against, locally maintained schools are actually doing better. So it would be quite interesting to give us a better grasp of actually what's happening in the delivery of education in Northumberland. So is that possible? It might take a bit of tweaking and things. I'd be very grateful. I think we'd all be interested in that one.
Is that something that's possible?
Yes, I could either do that within the next report and continue to provide that information from there on. Or I can provide a briefing note in the interim if that would be helpful.
I think that would give everybody a good solid picture about how education
would you be happy for it just to be in the next report, Councillor Dale, rather than get an interim briefing on that?
Well, how quickly you can progress that on, that's up to you.
I mean, it is information that's available, but I can certainly provide that within the next report, which would be due March 24. But if you want that information prior to that, then I can provide it in the form of a briefing note. I think it'd probably be quite nice to have it before, if you could.
Okay, right. Well, if I can leave that with you, Anna, if you can provide an interim, but obviously you'll change the format in the next report that comes to the committee as well, so it'll be in there as well.
Yes, I will do.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
We've got 3 hands up at the same time. I didn't see who went first, so I'm going to be old-fashioned and take ladies first. Councillor Grimshaw.
Thank you very much. Well, excellent reports. And it's good to see, but there again, the area of concern is staff retention, and that's worrying. And I don't know if that will have quite an impact on some of the reports you get back from Ofsted and indeed the Quality Care Commission, because it's not their own faults that this is happening, and yet they're downgraded because of the situations that they're in through no fault of their own. But also, has many care homes closed because they can't retain the staff, and they've had to close because of the difficulties really based around they can't meet the needs because of the fact they can't employ staff. I just wonder if we've got an update on the homes that's actually closed. If you don't mind, thank you.
Councillor, should I answer that one from an adult's point of view first of all? So in terms of the older person's care homes in Northumberland, we've got 71 of those. We went into the pandemic with 69, so we've actually had an increase in the number of older person's care homes. When it comes to the specialist mental health and learning disability residential care homes, we've had an ongoing programme probably since the early 2000s linked to the Value on People agenda to try and move our services from residential care into much more independent provision. So in the report here on page 29, there's a table that actually shows that there are 4 services in Northumberland which have deregistered. 2 of those are specialist residential care homes. One of them was Walby Hill, one of them was Chibborn Court. They've both closed as residential care homes. We hope to open Chibborn as a different status home, but that's part of a planned programme. And that would be a positive change to see that one close and people move into more independent living.
Thank you. That answers my question, and that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Grimshaw. And I'll take Councillor Sessford next.
Thank you very much, Chair. looking at that table on page 29, and I think there's something that Councillor Dale mentioned before, is that if you've got something that requires improvement, we put help in to those areas, and then you know that you can see here that a lot of them have changed from all right up into good. But on the other hand, you've got some that have gone the other way around. You know, they've gone from being good or even outstanding in one case, and now it requires improvement. But all we get is a look from sort of December or January really through to June, and what you don't get is maybe something with a bit longer term. So, I mean, are these yo-yo schools, or is help being put in, and as soon as they reach a certain level, it's taken out again, or is it longer term care? So I would like a bit more information given that gives you whether there's a pattern there, you know, whether in fact that, you know, this school has been good for year upon year upon year, had a bit of a blip, bit of help's gone in, they've gone back up again, that's fine. It could be a change of leadership or something like that. Sorry, not school, adult social care. Or is it just a case of we put a little bit in, and as soon as they've reached a level, they take it back out again, they go back down? I mean, I think there's a little bit more spread out required.
Okay, Alan, is that something you can answer?
Yeah, I think we could probably answer that in the same response that Councillor Dale's asked for as well, as a kind of interim response on that. I had a look at that list again. Obviously, when we put the report together, I had a look at it this morning. Some of those that had moved from good, that are showing us requires improvement in there. I know that we've done some intensive work with them. At least one of them is outside the time period of this report, but I know it's moved from requires improvement back up to good. It really, you know, the timescales for that transition in rating just depends on the seriousness of the issues. So we had we'd previously reported that we had two inadequate care homes. They've moved now to requires improvement. That was quite a substantial piece of work for us, so that, you know, the depth of seriousness and the volume of issues in an establishment probably dictates how much time we need to invest in it to support the care homes to improve. Certainly your point about the change of leadership can have quite a significant impact on a care home as well. It's linked to recruitment and retention issues in the sector partly, but where we've got, generally I would say, where we've got stable management into an establishment, that service does benefit from that. We tend to, you know, you get experienced managers, hopefully used to managing the inspection regime and keeping on top of all of the issues. So sometimes when we get a change in manager, that's a bit of a flag to us, so we would try and get into the service. And I would add that as well as the intensive reactive response that we would put into a service that's required improvement, we do have a proactive monitoring regime as well. So we go out to services that are rated good as well if we haven't been out to see them for quite some time. And if we spot anything in those visits, we will try and work with the provider ahead of its CQC inspection as well to make sure any issues we spot are put right. We can't get round all of them. You know, we've got close to 100 care homes in Northumberland. We can't get to them all as quick as we would like to, but we've got flags that are raised to us as a contracts and a commissioning team that I manage that would result in us targeting a particular service as well.
I think what I'm also have been asking within that is when is the help withdrawn? Because could it, you know, is it in over a period of time to make sure that these places are embedded in good performances, or is it withdrawn quite quickly? And also, of course, without the details of what's gone on in the previous inspection, we don't know whether the schools are going up, and I keep saying schools, you know what I mean, are going up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah, I can cover some of that in the follow-up report that we do. Certainly those two establishments that were rated inadequate had a track record of being it requires improvement for quite some time, you know, with the exception of short intervals where they were rated as good. And I think the Care Quality Commission significantly downgraded their ratings because of that track record over probably 5 years, something like that. So they took quite a harsh stance with regards to those services. Others, there might just be a momentary blip in a particular area that, goes against the trend of that particular home. I think there are some in there that are generally quite good establishments, but there will be some that yo-yo a little bit as well because they haven't got that stable management in. We would make a judgment on when we would withdraw our support, but we'd want to be confident that the residents in a home were safe and being well looked after before we would step out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that okay for you, Councillor Sesford? Yeah, it sounds like what the interim, the piece of work that you're going to provide us with will give us more context and more trends in terms of things like this, so we can actually see what the history was and whether this, as Councillor Sesford rightly says, whether this is just a one-off blip or whether this is actually looking like a trend in certain areas. That could be very useful, I think. Councillor Oliver, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Very encouraging report. People in Northumberland are clearly being well looked after at the early stages and the latter stages of their life. At the latter stages, where some of the facilities require improvement or are inadequate, you say that you often restrict placements to those places. Is there enough capacity in surrounding areas to do that? What's the overall capacity situation like?
Yeah, the overall capacity helps us manage that situation. So we could go through a period where we would restrict placements, but we also have to weigh up the risk to that business overall as well, because if they don't get new people coming in, that business will reach a level of income where it's no longer sustainable. So we weigh a few things up. Where we do start to make placements into an establishment that's inadequate, that will be really carefully managed. So we would have less complex people going in there, and we would have restrictions on the frequency of referrals. So it might be, one person every week, one person every fortnight. It's stringently managed.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions on this one? Councillor Wallace.
Thanks, Chair. As I approach the need for adult social care, I think I should ask questions about that. I've had a lot of contact this year from parents about their school children not being able to get a school of their choice. So if I work on that and say I have residents whose husband perhaps is needing adult care, do they have a choice? See, I live in southeast Northumberland, where there's most of the population is. Is there cases where if there's not the opportunity in Bedlington for a room or whatever, that they have to go to Belford? Likewise, if there's problems in Belford, is there times when you have to go out of the county? And finally, Chair, if I may, it's a costly business, but it's a necessary business. And the recent census shows the population in Northumberland is growing. The demographics show people are living longer and getting older and therefore need more care. So I was surprised when you said nearly 100 establishments, but the $64 million question is that enough? Can Northumberland residents be assured that there is a space for them? And I appreciate what you're saying about independent living, and I welcome that. I used to work in the industry where we looked after people in independent living. So I really understand the value, but it's when you can't do that, is there the space? And it's really following on from Councillor Oliver's question about capacity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I mean, there's quite a lot to unpack in that, but I'm not quite sure if some of the questions are really the sort that you can answer, but if you can unpick what you can from Councillor Wallace's questions. Then.
Yeah, thank you. I'll unpick that. Certainly, our concentration of care home provision for older people is concentrated in the southeast of Northumberland, where the majority of the population lives. I would expect that people who live in the southeast would have choice and a number of care homes that are available to them. As you get into more rural areas, that choice becomes restricted because we have fewer establishments in those areas. We're certainly aware of the challenges that I think we have operationally are less so about older persons' care homes, but in the last 2 years, they've been much more about domiciliary care, where we've not been able to source the level of domiciliary care that we need to for our residents. We've reported into Cabinet and to overview and scrutiny on that as an issue as well. So there are reports available if you would like to have a look into, a description of what the issues are and what we're doing to try and resolve that. We have seen an improvement in that situation since April of this year. So the numbers of people who are waiting for domiciliary care has come down quite significantly since April. It's still not where we want it to be, and we're taking a number of steps to try and improve on that. But that, to me, is the biggest area of risk to choice about what people want. And I think given the choice, most people would prefer to stay in their own homes with a domiciliary care package rather than going into an older person's care home. In terms of your questions about the future, I would say, as we sit here today, we've got about 230 vacancies in older persons' care homes across Northumberland, but our plans are to try and improve and increase the choice that people have got, so that there's that gap between domiciliary care and the need for residential care is filled by extra care, which is something in the middle, if you like, where people have more independent lives in a more independent setting, but care and support attached to that. So we've got a programme and a strategy to try and increase the numbers of extra care establishments in Northumberland. The most recent to open, we saw Bernicia open Roseborough Court in Cramlington probably about a year or so ago. We've got a planning application in for a site in Northumberland where we hope to see an extra care site developed, and this afternoon I'm visiting another part of Northumberland where, again, we're trying to develop that as provision to deal with that change in the population.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Does that answer your question, Councillor Walsh? Thank you for that. That's just very useful. Unless there are any more questions on this one, I think we can close this item off. The recommendation is the committee is recommended to assess the effectiveness of the actions the council takes in response to external inspections and confirm an assurance that the council has taken appropriate action in respect of any issues. So I think we can do that as a group. Do we have a proposer? Councillor Grimshaw and Councillor Jackson, thank you very much. And thank you very much for coming and presenting that. That was an excellent report. Okay. We move on. Item number 6. This is the Corporate Fraud Annual Report. Report of Councillor Richard Wearmouth, who is with us in the gallery at the back there, but it will be presented, I think, by Kevin MacDonald, the Chief Internal Auditor. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will just hand over to Amy Hodgson, who's our Corporate Fraud Manager. So Amy's going to run through the highlights of the report with the committee.
Amy. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kevin. Yes, so the report that I've brought to committee today is the same report that we'll bring every 6 months. This is the annual report, where we give you all of the details of the work that we've done during the period April 22 to March 23. As with our interim report, you will notice on page 42 that the work that we do for revenues, council tax and NDR occupies the majority of our investigations and time. That has increased slightly since our interim report because during the latter part of this period we did have the launch of the single person discount review project, which I know I mentioned briefly at the last time I came along. So that obviously has increased the amount of work that we're doing with council tax. After that, I think the next area that is of most important and significance to our team at the minute is the tenancy fraud side. That's both with our own housing stock, and we do a little bit of work externally for some other housing providers. And you can see the results from all of that at page 43. Again, that shows the total financial savings and overpayments that we've recorded for this year is nearly £4 million. Again, a lot of that comes, you'll see broken down above, comes from the work that we do within housing and council tax as well, which obviously reflects the amount of work that we do with the two of those. I have obviously highlighted that coming out of the pandemic and the restrictions that were obviously put into during that time massively restricted the work that we did as a team. We did obviously put things in place that we could continue to do some work, but obviously we have took advantage of those restrictions lifting and returned to a lot more face-to-face work. We've been able to conduct some PACE interviews, which is the interviews under caution for the more criminal investigations that we've been looking at. And we've started up joint working again with the Department for Work and Pensions, which is already shown some successes coming through. So you will see on page 44 at part 9, I've put some details there about the sanctions that have come out. So obviously these do take a little bit of time to filter down. The criminal investigations take a little bit longer than more normal investigations. So from starting them to them actually coming to conclusion and the sanctions being recorded, they do take a while. But you can see obviously last year we got 6, which is pleasing. Obviously they are improving year on year, and already this year we're seeing that is going to improve again and increase. With the single person discount project, we have told you a little bit of information about that on page 46. So there had been a little bit of work done in the background setting up this project, but the official launch date was the 1st of October 2022. So this report has been able to capture a little bit of the early indications of the work that is doing. What I've done is I've provided details of the parishes that we've ran so far, so that you can see the parishes that we've ran during this period. And then obviously it has broken down on page 46 at 14. It's broken down the amount of financial savings and overpayments from the total earlier on in the report that is attributed just to that project. And I think that is probably all I need to bring your attention to, but obviously, Chair, if there are any questions.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I'll open this one straight up to the floor for any questions. That's quite unusual.
I know.
Quite unusual. I mean, I think it's a really good report. It's very clear. It's good to see that you're getting back to face-to-face interviews, to be quite honest. And are you finding that's having a measurable impact? Is it actually improving your outcomes, if you like, from the work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So with regards to the sanction side of things, without a face-to-face interview under caution PACE interview, which we do face-to-face, there could be no criminal sanctions on those cases. So what we did notice, I think I've got noted here, in 2021, we recorded no sanctions at all, which obviously was understandable given what in the height of restrictions at that time. During 21-22, we recorded 3. Again, that's reflective of the time that it sometimes takes a bit longer for them to filter through. Last year, 22-23, obviously 6. So that was doubled. And in this year, in the first 6 months, it looks like it potentially could double again.
Right. So we're seeing a real measurable improvement because of this. So we're getting back to business as usual, really, in terms of the way that you do your job.
Absolutely,
and we're
Chair.
seeing a real improvement in the figures coming through. So I should expect improvements next time when we see the new report of this.
Yes, and just to note again, it's not just the sanctions, the financial, the monetary value is obviously increasing as well year on year, as we've been able to return.
Okay, that's good news. Councillor Dale, you've got a question, and I'll take Councillor Grimshaw after that.
Just to say thank you very much for the value of your staff and all the work they do. And I would especially like to bring about a single person discount project, which I think is alive and kicking still.
It is.
And it's great to know that the council actually are on looking at things right across the board. And that should be a message to everybody about payments or whatever. And actually, if you have any concerns, you can always contact the council and they would help you if you've got a problem or not. But just to say thank you for that piece of work, and it's enlightening. Thank you.
I'll pass that on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grimshaw.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to reiterate what Councillor Dale said, but just expand slightly and have discussed it to think, well, perhaps you could, you know, get the word out on social media or whatever, or wherever it is. You could just not identifying anyone, but just to say this is what we've recouped. You know, it's like Big Brother, we're watching you. You know what I mean? Just so hopefully, you know, it highlights the fact that yes, there's action being taken, and hopefully that might reduce it even further than even thinking about doing it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Absolutely, that's a good point. Did you want to say anything about that, Jan?
If I may, Chair, just to say that we're also trying to get the word out about some of the proactive campaigns that we're running. So, for example, we're having a big push on tenancy and right to buy fraud, and so lots of information is going out on social media about that. And you'll see from the report that is one of the high value you know, sort of areas that we target. So yes, getting more information out about the successes of our team, but also getting the word out to potential fraudsters that we're coming for them. I think both important.
I think that's an excellent suggestion, because the spin-off benefit of this and the fact that you're getting more results is once we make that known, you know, it's a preventative control, isn't it? It stops people thinking about doing the same thing themselves because they know that the radar is switched on again, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we're going to look at doing more of in the future, definitely.
Excellent, good.
Thank you.
All right. Any more questions for Amy before I let her go? Okay, well, thank you, Amy, for that. That was very good. Thank you for that very positive report. It's good that things are looking up in that area. Thank you. We move on to item 7. That was just for note and consideration, so we don't have to take a vote on anything on that. Item 7 is the annual report from Audit Committee to the Council, and Kevin MacDonald, Head of Internal Audit and Risk Management, will present this.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yes, as committee will be aware, there is best practice guidance in place for how audit committees in local government operate, which is published by SIPFA, and we periodically do our self-assessment against those arrangements. And committee may remember that there was an action from the last time we undertook that work with regard to an annual report from audit committee to council, just demonstrating to full council how audit committee has addressed and met the terms of reference that it's given and agreed by council, and giving a flavour of the work undertaken as part of fulfilling that work programme, the matters discussed, etc., just to provide that assurance to full council that audit committee is doing what it was asked to do. Hence the report before committee this morning, Chair. The appendix, which starts on page 55, is just hopefully a quite succinct annual report for the 22-23 year, proposed to be presented to full council from and on behalf of audit committee. It just runs through, gives a flavour, as I've mentioned, of some of the work that has been done by committee during 22-23, and the 48 reports which were considered by the committee during the year, which I think is quite a considerable number. And then just some sort of brief highlights from the various areas of work considered by the committee during the year. Chair, it's for committee to agree and hopefully agree, so that we can then present that on to full council as described, but more than happy for any comments or queries or questions which members may have.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Yes, I mean, I think it's a good report, and quite surprising, actually, to be quite honest, to see the summary of reports considered over 22-23. That's quite extensive. It's certainly, it's felt like a lot, but it's when you see it written down, it is a lot. So any questions for Kevin before we move on to take a decision on this one? No. Councillor Dale?
Yes, can I just say thank you very much for this report, because I think it's a good report to go to full council, so full council understands the role of the Audit Committee and the importance of its independence. And I'd like to thank you, Chair, and Kevin, for all the work over the year. I did actually enjoy also, which is not in here, that we were able to speak to you in confidence. Each member was invited to go and have a whinge or put forward their sort of thing. Mine was the normal risk appraisal panel, etc. But I think that was a really good opportunity where you could gather everybody's independent views of what they thought. But I think the message in here is that it is our role to investigate, look, make sure we have the assurances, controls, everything in place for anything that's going on in the council, and that we have that right. I know, for instance, which I will ask, and we can discuss it at other time, is our independence, and as far as the legality of being asked whether we can ask questions or not, and that's not getting at any point at all, but it's actually understanding that if there is anything, that maybe it should be on pink paper, but actually the council has to understand that position and the reasons why. And I think as the committee, we should also understand the reasons why in depth. So, you know, we are bound by, obviously, confidentiality in those positions. I think from past reporting, and I'll go back to, for instance, the last audit, statement of accounts, there are things in there whereby audit could have done more and should have done more. And I think this brings into the light of the council the position of the audit committee, and it's, once again I'll say, it is actually totally independent of any other work. And so I thank you for that. I thank you for this report, because I think it's really informative and helpful, and I welcome, I don't know who will take it to full council, but that's where it'll go. So Kevin, I don't know, you can't, but I mean, I don't know who will take it to full council.
I think it'll probably be taken by Councillor Towns as the deputy chair of this committee. I think I understand that's the plan anyway. So I think that's and I think Councillor Towns has been approached and said he's happy to do that. So,
right. Yes. I'm just asking, but thank you for that. It will go soon, I presume.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dale. I don't know if there's anything that you particularly need to pick up from that, Kevin.
I don't think so, Chair.
Yeah. Okay.
I've nothing to add.
Thank you. Well, if there's nothing else on this one, the purpose of the report of this report is to present an annual report from Audit Committee to the Council for 22-23 for the agreement of Audit Committee. So, are we all happy with this going forward as it is at the present time? I think we're getting seeing nods around the room. So, okay, we'll take that as passed. Thank you very much for that one, Kevin. And we move on. And this is the External Audit Strategy Memorandum from Mazars, and to present it we have Jim Dafter, who is Senior Manager at Mazars. Jim, is that your title? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I don't propose to go through this report page by page, because it isn't that thrilling, to be honest. But if we can start off on page 71 of your pack, and it just outlines there the engagement team, and just to point out, that's the 4th year of the same engagement team. So we've got to the point now where we do know the council well, and I think the council know us well, and they know our approach as well. So it's a good combination. Page 74, we outline our draft timetable, and just to point out that the audit has started in line with the kick-off of July. We are in touch with Jan and her officers in finance. We are doing walkthroughs of financial systems. We are documenting systems and controls, etc. So we are in a place we should be at this time of year. Page 75 just outlines the group, being the council and Advance, same as in previous years. And then moving on down to page 80, where we start looking at significant risks, of which there are 4. There's management override, which is a risk you'll see in every audit by every firm in every body. Defined benefit pension liability valuation, and that's a significant risk just by the sheer size of the figure in the account. It's absolutely enormous. Evaluation of council dwellings, other land and buildings and surplus assets, again, that's to do with the size of the figure in the accounts. It wouldn't take much in either of those two situations, the pension fund or the valuations, for there to be a material error in there. So we do place a lot of time and effort in those areas. And the last one is the valuation of investment property, which is the group which is held by Advance, where we work with Advance's external auditors to get our assurance in that area. In addition to that, there's an area of an enhanced risk because it's an area of management judgment, and that's to do with PFI. And again, there's some big figures involved in there, and it's a technical piece of work. Therefore, we do place a fair bit of time in that area. Moving on to page 86 and value for money. What we're saying in there is that we haven't finished off our risk assessment yet. Obviously, prior year issues that are still outstanding, going back to 1920, would be feeding into our risk assessment for 22-23. So when we have completed that risk assessment, we will bring it back for members' attention. And finally, the bit nobody likes, which is page 89, where we outline the fees for the audit. And that's both for the audit itself and for the non-audit work we do, which in the case of the council is housing benefit subsidy, teachers' pensions, and the pooling of housing capital receipts. So I'll leave it there, Chair, but happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you, Jim. So nice and clear, I think. Opening up for questions. Anybody? Any questions for external audit? No. Councillor Dale. Can you put your microphone on?
Page 25, but can I just ask the assurance service pooling of housing capital receipts, is that all the capital receipts across the council and Venezia and all? I don't know what capital receipts you pool.
It's a claim to do with house sales in the year, a proportion of which goes back to the government and a proportion of which is kept by the council, to the best of my knowledge. I'm not sure if Jan wants to come in on that one.
These are all HRA capital receipts that we're talking about
Oh,
from right to
right.
buy sales.
So does that include advance as well?
No, it doesn't.
The housing, it's just
no, it's just
council.
council.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any more questions for Jim while we've got him? Okay. Well, if everybody's happy with that, then I think it was a very clear report. I think the fact that we haven't got many questions on it shows that it's fairly self-explanatory. Thank Jim for presenting that. We'll move on. Item 9 is urgent business. We don't have any urgent business. Nothing's been brought to my attention anyway. Sorry, Councillor Oliver.
Just raise it's your last meeting, and I think we should just put on record our thanks as a committee. You're, I think, the first independent chair. It's as we've sort of discussed earlier in this meeting and in previous meetings. It's been quite a busy time for the audit committee. So I think on behalf of all of us, I would just like to thank you for the time you've given and the effort you've put in and the work, the things that you've achieved as the chair of the committee.
Well, thank you for that, Councillor Oliver, and thank you, the committee members. It's been a very interesting couple of years. I'll use the word interesting maybe in inverted commas. It has definitely been, but as I said earlier on, looking at the report that Kevin provided with the 48 separate pieces of work that we looked at, it felt like a lot of work, and it is a lot of work, and it's a very demanding role, to be quite honest, as an independent chair of a committee of this time. Obviously, I made a statement to the press why I'm stepping down. It's just I don't personally have the bandwidth at the minute to actually do this role justice. So that's, I feel sad that that's the case, but I would rather be upfront and tell you that rather than actually let you down at a later point, if you like. So I'm optimistic that the council will find another independent chair who will take this forward and make a really good job and have the time and the energy, hopefully, to do justice to the job that is required here. So I wish you all well in that respect, and I hope that the committee goes from strength to strength. So thank you for your kind words. Item 10, back to mundane business, date of the next meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, the 29th of November, at the usual time of 10:15. And this is the point where we close the public part of the meeting and ask the gentlemen of the press and other members to leave. Robin Earls, the Chief Operating Officer from Advance, and will stay for this item because it concerns Advance Northumberland, so that's okay. Okay.